the divine who created us all cares enough. I'm not special.
Mhm.
Let that be really clear. There's nothing exciting about me. If there was ever a candidate of somebody to be left at the bottom of the canyon and abandoned, it would have been me. I mean,
Oh.
I had failed so many ways. It
Mm.
wasn't even funny. I'd attempted suicide twice. I mean, I was the last person that would have been worth the effort. And my knowledge is, if the divine cares that much about me, then I know, no matter where you've been, no matter what's happened to you before,
Mhm.
you're worth it. And every effort and thought and movement toward taking control and learning to love and be loved, including loving yourself, is worth it.
I have the incredible honor of having Kellan Fluckiger. Kellan is a C-suite executive board member. He's a speaker. He's an ultimate catalyst for personal transformation. He's a leadership mentor. You know, he's a life and business coach. And guess what, guys? He's an eight-time #1 Amazon best-selling author. Kellan is the host of the Ultimate Life podcast. Kellan is a lover of people. You know, coming from decades of depression, addiction, life-threatening illness, and near-death experience, Kellan has become an ultimate catalyst to help motivated people melt barriers, move mountains, and mobilize their superpowers to achieve their truest desires. Whoa!
Well, you're embarrassing me, my word.
Honestly, I am so delighted to have you on my podcast. I just really want to officially welcome you, Kellan, to the Beautifully Broken Me podcast.
Well, I want to thank you. And that big, long list of things, it's all true. But you know what's really important? What's really important is you here now, because right now you are making a choice to turn your story and your adversity into adding good to the world. Like we all add carbon dioxide because we breathe, but you are making a choice to do the labor of love that is a podcast, all the work, finding people and carrying a message and being a beacon of light. And I want to honor you for that, because it's the important work. And all the list of stuff is, yeah, it's whatever it is. But the real message is one of love and of hope and of lifting each other to better, to be better, to do better, and to make better stuff in the world, you know?
Yes. Thank you so, so much.
I love the name of your podcast, the Beautifully Broken Me podcast, because, you know, you listed all that stuff. But the truth is, 15 years ago, I'm 66. So 15 years ago in 2007, if you had met me, what you would have met was a self-absorbed, high-ranking, high-functioning depressive, cocaine addict, useless big dog who was making more money than he needed to make and had more money than brains, and a completely different person. And so, yeah, there's a lot of achievements that came during that time, but nothing compares to the joy that I get now by helping people discover, develop, and serve with their own divine gifts.
Wow, wow, wow. That is super, super, super incredible. I was looking at one of your posts on Facebook, and it was saying something about rocks. It says rocks are integral part of growth. They can be a stumbling block and they can be a stepping stone. So I just really want you to talk to us about that in depth.
Well, I just finished a book in December. It'll be out in a month or so. And the name of the book is Forgiveness, a journey of courage to a place of freedom and power. And what I meant by the rocks are a stumbling block is we all have stuff that happens to us. It might be just because things happen. It might be because someone was cruel and unkind, and you know, even someone trusted did something bad to us. You told me a little bit about your story, you know, some abuse that happened to you. those things happen. And when they do happen, we have a choice. And the choice we have is we can be a victim of those things. And that looks like being perpetually mad at either God or the world or the person or situation and raging that it shouldn't have happened, which it probably shouldn't, but if it did, and if we stay mad and stay angry or frustrated or hurt or withdrawn or any of those negative things, then it remains a stumbling block. And whenever it happened, it keeps having power today and tomorrow and the next day because I keep being destroyed or hurt by this event that happened. Or I can say, that happened, it did whatever it did to me, but starting today, I'm going to get over being angry. I'm going to take control of the levers of my life. I'm going to change some things, get the help I need, read the books, get a coach, see some counselors, do something, because I'm not living there anymore in that situation. And so one is a stumbling block where it keeps hurting me as long as I let it. The other is a stepping stone, which says, okay, I've learned this, I've taken some control, and I'm moving forward on my own terms. So that's what I was thinking about when I wrote that.
Oh, that is so good. I really liked it because it really spoke to me a lot because I've been through a lot of things like you said, and thank you so much for explaining that. Is that basically an ultimate life? That life where I am expressing my truest, authentic self. Because in this episode, we're talking about how to achieve your ultimate life. Is there an ultimate life?
So there is. And one of the things that people think is, I have to have all this, whatever your list is, this amount of money, this amount of health. I have to have all this stuff, and then I'll be happy. So I have a podcast like you do, and it's called Your Ultimate Life. And it's funny how it started. At the beginning of this whole worldwide pandemic stuff a couple of years ago, someone called my wife, who's my business partner, and her name's Joy, of all things. But anyway, and asked her, does Kellan have a podcast? Because lockdowns were just starting and they wanted something to listen to, and they knew that I did speaking and stuff. And we didn't have one, but Joy said, yes. And then she came downstairs and said, we have a podcast. So I said, okay. And I created Your Ultimate Life. That podcast is a daily short 15-minute podcast. And the premise is how to create a life of purpose, prosperity, and joy that you create by serving with your divine gifts. So, and it is based on that. I believe it's 100% true. You can have a life of purpose, a life of prosperity, and a life of joy, and you can create it by serving with your divine gifts. And the key is you can have it today. It is not, I don't have to do all this and then I'll be happy over there. If I have this amount of money or this amount of health or this amount of whatever, joy is a choice. All the time. It is always a choice.
Wow. I just have a really kind of something I read from one of your quotes. You said, when we whine and complain, it's interesting to ask who is talking. So I just really, and honestly, that really resonates to me a lot. And I just really want you to share more light on it because we're just talking about it.
Well, so what I mean by that is we all have different voices in our heads, right? The complainer and the positive person and all this other stuff. When I hear a feeling, like I have a feeling of being angry or frustrated or complaining about something, I literally ask, okay, who's talking? Like, what piece of me is talking? And if I'm complaining about something, it's the person, it's the voice or the me that says, that shouldn't have happened. Somebody should have done something different. It should be fixed, right? And so it's that kind of finger wagging, nah person. And I thought, and then I go on and think, I don't want that person running my day. Like, I don't want that whiny, find the negative person. I don't want them in charge of anything. So why don't, how else can I look at this thing? What else is possible? Like, who else is in there? Come on, let's get another voice. I don't want a whiny, kid or teenager or whoever that is running my show today. Get out of here. And so I ask who's talking, and it's, the entitlement person, the complainer, the blamer. That's the one that turns out always to be talking when those kind of noises happen. And we can choose. This is the liberating truth. We can choose who's in charge of our dialogue. We just have to practice.
Absolutely. It's so true. Super true. I just want to bring you back a little bit because I'm just asking out of curiosity, right? You're just really like, you achieved so much, you did a lot of things. But I want to know, like, honestly, like, what was that aha moment that made you start up what you're doing right now?
Oh, I was thick-headed. In August of 2007, I was big dog, making C-suite, this, that, making a lot of money, but I was also a $3,000 a week cocaine addict. And that is a ridiculous amount of money, stupid stuff. So what happened in August of 2007, I came home from work on a Friday night. I have 10 children. 4 of them were living with me. I was single again for the 3rd time. And I was getting ready to go out and party for the weekend on Friday. It might have been till Monday or Tuesday or something. And all of a sudden, I felt like I needed to turn on the television. Now, that doesn't sound like anything, except I realized when I went to do it, I didn't know how. I'd had somebody come from the store and put in big stuff, but I wasn't a TV watcher. So I picked up the remote and I'm like, I don't know how to turn on the TV. So I asked one of my kids to turn it on, and one of my daughters turned it on, threw a remote at me, dummy, and left the room. And it landed on a program called Intervention. Now, you may not know what that is. It's a reality TV show where families stage an intervention for people in the family that are busted in some way. And the protagonist in that show was a high-ranking executive with a cocaine problem. So I watched about 10 minutes of, me, not really, but me on the screen. I'm like, yeah, I'm not watching this crap. So I turned it off and I went and did some other stuff. And then I was ready to go out to party for the weekend. And I felt compelled to turn the TV back on. So I did. And this time I knew how. And so I turned it on and that program started over. And no, I don't have a recorder. And no, it wasn't on the schedule. And no, it can't do that. But it did. And I'm like, oh, crap. I guess I'm supposed to watch this. So I watched the program and it went really badly. The guy yelled at his relatives and didn't accept any help and denied he had a problem. And the drill, right? But it freaked me out enough that I didn't go out. I went to bed. And when I went to bed, I went to hell. And what I mean by that is I went somewhere, it felt out of body. And I was in like a theater and I was watching the whole parade of events of my life go by really slowly and it was all focused on suffering, the suffering that I had experienced as a kid, up through all the suffering I had inflicted on everybody else with failed relationships and my drug problems and lying and everything else. And after a long time, a voice in the dream said, "It is enough." I woke up and the sun was shining in the window, which was weird because the window faced west. And I got up and I realized it was 5 o'clock Saturday afternoon. So I'd been somewhere for nearly 18 hours.
Wow.
I got up and I said, okay, I think I've been invited to change. And I had no idea how to do whatever, but I threw away all the stuff that I had, probably $1,000 worth of stuff. I threw it away and I quit all the drugs that day. And that was only the first part because that got me sober, but it didn't do anything else about the self-loathing that I felt inside that was the real problem, because that's what got me there in the first place. That happened 2 weeks later. So 2 weeks later, I hadn't quit the work that I had yet, even though I knew I was going to, because I had to change my whole life and I didn't know how to do it yet. But in the position I had, because I was, big dog, blah, 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 I used to get all kinds of free stuff. So people would give me free tickets to this and, because people wanted to be nice to Kellan because I made big decisions. But anyway, one of the things I got were 2 free tickets to see Yo-Yo Ma. Now, if you know classical music, you know who that is. And if you don't, you don't. But in the classical world, it's like, he's this amazing world performer. And I didn't want to waste this other ticket. So I'm like, okay, because I'm single again for the 3rd time. Now I'd be ashamed to waste this ticket. So I asked in the groups that I managed who likes classical music. And some lady in one of the groups said, well, I do. And I looked at her and I said, have I ever given you anything before? And she said, no. I said, okay, fine. See you there. So I gave her the ticket and we met at the concert. It was spectacular. And now you got to remember, I'm 2 weeks stone cold sober at this point. And halfway through the show, this feeling came over me that I recognized from 2 weeks before as kind of otherworldly. And a voice in my head said, you need to marry this woman. And I said, you're insane. I said, I've screwed that up 3 times officially with some other messes, but it's not happening. Later that night, we were backstage because they were, backstage passes. And the voice came back and said, yeah, comma, and you need to tell her tonight.
Wow.
And I said, yeah, not happening. She can have me arrested for harassment and, not happening. No. But you don't win those arguments. So I did. And it went about like you would have expected. Are you out of your mind? Like, what are you thinking? Are you crazy? What are you talking about? But over the next 2 weeks, she had her own set of experiences. And so 2 weeks after that, she resigned from her career. I walked away from millions of dollars in contracts.
Oh, wow.
And we walked off into the sunset together. And 3 months ago, we celebrated our 14th wedding anniversary.
Whoa, that's good.
Now, as amazing as that story is, it wasn't love at first sight. It wasn't anything. It was, hey, dummy, you don't know how to do this. Let me help you. That one. It was kind of like that. And then to her too, she had her own set of experiences. And the reason it's important is she was the angel that was sent to help me deal with depression and self-loathing. I had never talked to a soul.
Wow.
I'm 52 and I'd never talked to anyone. She found me people to talk to. She helped me figure out how to be a person, how to tell the truth, how to have a friend, how to be a friend. And so those 2 events constituted what I call my divine invitation to change my life. And we had to do all the work. It wasn't smooth and it wasn't easy, but that was the turning point. And so since that day, I walked away from everything I'd ever done before and started over.
Oh, that's such a powerful story. That's so incredible. That's such a powerful story. And that just brings me to, this particular quote. It's saying that one of the deepest desire in a man's heart, in the life of somebody, is the desire to be loved. You want to share anything in that regard? Because everybody has that deepest need to be loved unconditionally. So
we do. And that was a thing that was one of the things that, I didn't tell you the fun part. My wife's name is Joy. Like, you can't make this stuff up, right? Okay. So one of the things that Joy taught me was what that was, because up till then, with my family, my mom, and the relationships I had before, everything was conditional. It was always fear. Well, if this happens, then this. There's nowhere safe. And so my answer to that was to retract and to hide in myself and do this whole battle alone. And I didn't know what having a friend, I didn't know what loyalty, I didn't even know what those things were. I knew what the words meant, but I didn't think there was any truth to that. So the experience of having someone say they would go with me, like I've asked Joy a bunch of times, like, what on earth possessed you to walk away? She had a great job and career, to walk away from that and off into the sunset with a drug addict. Like, what were you thinking? And she said, I don't know, except I knew to the core of my soul it was the right thing to do.
Wow.
And so that, every time anything gets difficult, that breathtaking choice is, you know what I mean? It's like the core, the anchor. It's like the divine who created us all cares enough. I'm not special. Let that be really clear. There's nothing exciting about me. If there was ever a candidate of somebody to be left at the bottom of the canyon and abandoned, it would have been me. I mean, I had failed so many ways. It wasn't even funny. I'd attempted suicide twice. I mean, I was the last person that would have been worth the effort. And my knowledge is if the divine cares that much about me, then I know no matter where you've been, no matter what's happened to you before, you're worth it. And every effort and thought and movement toward taking control and learning to love and be loved, including loving yourself, is worth it.
Wow, this is so powerful. Like, this is so powerful. Then I just want to know, like, what would you tell your younger self? Like, looking back now, your younger self, like maybe 20, 25.
It's funny because I remember those days like it was yesterday. I remember where I was living. I remember what I was doing. I had been divorced the first time. I was living in a little house. I had a bunch of child support payments. I was trying to figure out you know what I'd tell him? I would take that young man in my arms and just love him and let him know it's okay. Just keep moving, make choices, own your life, stop living according to what everybody's telling you. We live in this thing where we believe, I call it the Witot fungus, WITOT, and it stands for what I think others think. We live with this disease, and everyone controls us because we think we're supposed to this and supposed to that. So what I tell myself then is to be authentic, to be yourself, and quit worrying about what everybody else says, because that pain, that need to have approval, external, validation and all that stuff, that controlled my life so badly that I destroyed it until I quit doing that.
Now, tell us any last and final word.
This question, look, one of the most important things that I failed to learn until I was way into my 50s was that learning to love yourself is the most powerful gift you can give yourself. We walk around, we talk about ourselves and to ourselves the way we would never talk about a friend. We say negative things about ourselves. We blame ourselves. We stay viciously critical of ourselves in private. Learn to look yourself in the mirror and look in your own eyes and say, I love you, and mean it, and live into that truth. Because if you loved yourself really and deeply, you'd treat yourself better. You'd be grateful for every good thing you do, and who you're being in the world would completely change. So start there. Start with learning to love yourself no matter what.
Wow, what an incredible episode. I hope you've been blessed by this episode. Please be sure to subscribe so that you'll be the first to know when we upload a new episode. And please feel free to also tell a friend if this episode has greatly inspired you. You can visit us at thebeautifullybrokenne.com. You can also send us an email at numberij@numberij.com. We're also on social media at The Beautifully Broken Me. Thank you for listening. Stay blessed. Be well.